Welcome to the Coaching Uncovered podcast, the podcast where coaches come to talk about coaching. My name is Brent Davis and I'm the host of the podcast. And I have got, again, a young gun on the call. But as we said off there just before, I've got to stop saying that because I'm old now. And just about everyone I have on this show is younger than me now. So who have I got on the call today?
I am Brandon Rave, teaching professional at the Metropolitan Golf Club.
Mate, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with me. It's cool to catch up. We haven't caught up for a while, but I'm seeing your stuff on social media. I'm seeing all your stuff doing well, and you've got a pretty cool story. So I'm keen to get into it and
thanks for having me, mate. Look forward to it
and see where you're at because you've kind of jumped the gun a bit with where you're coaching at. So I'm keen to talk about that because you've had a bit of experience around some different venues.
Yes, certainly.
So I'm pretty cool to experience or to hear about your experiences at all these different places. But for those that don't know, you give us a bit of background on who you are and where you've come from.
Yeah. So like a lot of, let's say, coaches, I got into the game by my dad. He was a member at Latrobe Golf Club in Alphington, and he was just a club golfer. But when I was about 7 or 8, he just enrolled me there through. There was no My Golf or anything, but just clinics. Actually, with a very famous coach, Stephen Giuliano, funnily enough, the trainee there.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and Grant Gibson, who I believe is at maybe Clearwater Bay in Hong Kong. So it's funny to see where other trainees have gone throughout the world. But yeah, just it was convenient, I guess. He plays, I do clinics. See you later. Let's play some pool afterwards, and that's how I got into the game.
It's pretty cool for coaches, just off topic a little bit, to see juniors that you've worked with come through the system because I got a couple of, like Brett Coletta was a junior when I was first teaching at Rossdale, and he's coming on the podcast soon, and a few other guys that have gone on to do different things. But we've had some of those guys on the podcast as well, so it's cool that you've had some early experience. So talk me through those early experience as a player in those coaching environments.
So clinics were effectively just rock up. There was this little 3-hole course at Latrobe at the back. It's now a formally done 5-hole course by Tony Craswell, which is great, but very informally back then, just some flags in the ground. So at a very early age, well, first and foremost, there's no range at Latrobe. It was like 100 meters. So we just played holes, learned how to chip putt organically, and the mindset was kind of learn to score. Externally to that, my father would take me to Bull Lane driving range, which is no longer there anymore, funnily enough.
Freeway now, isn't it?
It's very close to being some sort of northeast link, and that'll be a good segue for later, hence why I was working numerous jobs when I lost that one effectively. But yeah, that was me, just clinics. Dad would take me to Bull Lane, was just a range rat himself. Didn't know much about, let's say, the technique, but just I would hit balls, smash balls in the bay next to him. And I think very organically the process started from there. So I was one of the very first cadet members at Latrobe, maybe at like 10 years old. And then through there, just you play the Victorian primary school stuff. And I was playing Colts pennant by 12 for Latrobe, senior pennant, playing Ivos. Back then, there was so many Ivos. Nowadays, it seems like there's not many. It just seemed that most Sundays were Ivo Wittens since the age of 13, and just learned to get into the system that way. So, and then progressed. I was fortunate that Latrobe had a very good crop of juniors, the sort of Michael Choys of the world. And you just get indoctrinated with good players, good people, and very organically things happen, I guess.
It can have a bit of an impact sometimes. Obviously, you I was similar setup. Grew up in the country, didn't have a practice fairway. We had a paid driving range where, as a kid, you couldn't afford to pay for too many golf balls. So we grew up playing holes. So, how do you think did that impact you as a player or as a kid? Do you think?
Look, I think reflecting back now, definitely. I think I was always a pretty good junior. But reflecting back now, probably. I think these days kids have too much technical advice without that sort of balance of learning to golf your ball. And I think maybe if you've got a psychologist, I think that they delve deep down, they would, if I reflect on that and I sort of implement that in my coaching now, where there's I'm fond of my TrackMan and my Capto and Sam Balance Lab and Putt Lab and everything, but I'm big on scoring, and I think that's where the American college system is quite good with that, teaching kids how to score. But yeah, I think trying to find some sort of balance there has shaped my coaching to some degree.
It can be hard, and people who have tuned to the podcast before have probably heard me say this as well. But golf's a sport where we don't teach it in the field of play, so to speak.
Yeah.
Whereas if you play tennis, you go to a tennis court.
Yeah.
You don't learn golf on a golf course as a general rule. You go and hit balls on a practice fairway.
Yeah.
Sometimes off a tee, sometimes off a driving range mat into a net.
Yeah.
And all those things.
Mat from 6 foot straight.
Yeah, for sure. So all those things kind of have an impact on how you learn the skills. But then you can talk about the fact that you have to have some sort of golf swing to be able to go on the golf course as well.
It's a fine line, that balance.
Yeah, correct. It is. But I think that's really, really cool that you had that early exposure to golf course, because it can be challenging sometimes, especially in the city. And I was curious whether you had any pushback from some of the older golfers about being a 10-year-old cadet on the golf course. Did you have any pushback at all?
Probably back then. It was slowly starting to turn the page, I think, especially when they might recognise, not to talk myself up at that age, but if a kid's probably doing okay and like you've got a handicap and I think my first handicap was like 27. So not a mug kind of thing. It was like, okay, maybe this kid has a bit of potential and shows it. So maybe a little easier to enter the door rather than maybe someone who's just clogging up your range every Saturday and clogging lists sort of thing. So, but I'm sure there was some sort of, maybe not being willing to have as many juniors back then when I was there, no doubt. Thankfully it's changed.
Yeah, hopefully it's changed.
Well, true. Yeah.
I still think there's clubs out there that definitely don't like the kids being out there, but
yeah, no doubt.
Clubs aren't going to survive if those kids aren't coming through. So.
Yeah, it's 2023. It's time to. Well, I'm a big traditionalist, but I think golf needs to keep its traditions, but it will fall to other sports if they don't evolve, no doubt.
Yeah, it's just the kid experience of other sports is so different than on a golf course. Like my kid plays every sport in the world except for golf.
You can be a kid, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And just like to go to the NBL, for example, like there's music playing and it's loud and the kids jumping
around, happy.
Yeah, it's cool. And I think golf coaching, especially with kids, is heading down that path. I think which is good. It certainly keeps them more keen to keep going.
I think that's very important. Like from a technical coach point of view, it's important to teach technique, but ultimately you can't be teaching much technique if they don't turn up next week, sort of thing.
Definitely. You've got to keep them coming back, having fun.
Some sort of engagement, no doubt.
Makes sense. So you said you played a fair few IBO Wittens as a kid or as a young amateur. How did coaching change then? So you've gone from clinics, I'm guessing when you were starting to play those state Varden events, you were getting some more serious coaching. So how did coaching look for you then?
So my first, let's say, formal coach was Stephen Giuliano, who's actually a mentor of mine, let's say, now. So he was my coach at La Trobe. Like what any coach would do, just reactive to what the kid wants. And then by age 14, my dad, Steve, and myself, we went to Las Vegas to see Butch Harmon for a couple of days, which was pretty cool. It was more just like not a piss take, but just a bit of an experience for all of us. And as you can imagine, as a midget sort of 14-year-old back then, way inside, big hooks. And I remember I had a lesson with Butch for like 5 minutes and it was just, try and exit left, hold the face open. And we're just like, I mean, he's obviously a very good coach, but it's like, I could have done, like, Steve, you could do this too, like just get a cut kind of thing. But it was just the whole experience. And back then there was kind of streets ahead of where Australia was in 2004 in terms of video analysis and that kind of thing. So just fun to see the different, you go through the different stages of coaching. And I saw John Davis, who was the junior state team coach at Sandringham. As a lot of parents do, you sort of want your kid to go to like state coaches, that kind of thing. And super simplistic, like super simple, like great coach. But when you look back now, it's kind of like, If I'm hitting cuts, he would say, "I'll just try and hit a draw." Oh, okay. And that's kind of how I was. Now it's like super technically bombarding, or it can be. But back then that's just the best they had. Vectors and TrackMan, as we know it now, have debunked a lot of old theories, but as a probably promising junior, you kind of figure a lot of stuff out by yourself, which I think is important still. But JD was very much, just hit a cut, mate. You'll be hooking it. Okay. And funny how some of that can work for some people, right?
Well, for sure. And there's an argument to be made that you can feel the extremes. So feel what a hook swing feels like, feel what a hook swing feels like, and then find somewhere in the center that's playable. And there's plenty of skill acquisition stuff out there that suggests that's a good way to go about it.
So, I remember Mike Thomas to Justin Thomas a couple of years ago did the same thing. He just felt lost. Chucks an alignment stick 2 yards in front of him and goes, "Start it right, draw it, start it left and fade it." He goes, "Are you good at golf?" And he's like, yeah, I can do this. Obviously, there's a level of technical proficiency to be able to demonstrate that. So maybe that's a good thing for JD was saying that to me as an okay 15-year-old, maybe.
I think that's good, and as I said, that's a valid way to coach. I don't have any issue with that whatsoever.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
That's cool. I should have got Squigs on to do a dual episode with you, because I'll be curious to see, because I know when I was coaching juniors, when I was first out of my time, and he went through about the same time as me, and how it would have changed. If you had the time to go back and work with you now, how would have changed his coaching? Would have been cool to have that conversation.
Certainly. And to be fair, when I was really like seeing Squigs 13, 14 kind of thing, I can't remember much, to be honest. It was just very much reactive, and I've been chipping it badly the last 2 weeks. Let's have a look, and then coach in response to the player. I think that might have been very common back then. I think of a lot of old school experience as well. Like, for example, I remember this instance when I was hitting these huge hooks once again as a sort of short ass, maybe 14-year-old. And we'd just stand behind a tree and just hit cuts and cuts and cuts. And informally, you probably wouldn't use terms like low point, swing direction, that kind of thing, but maybe implement left to right spin on the ball. I want the divot here. And I would just, as a kid, just see and do. Once again, maybe tailoring the coaching for the athlete, but that's how you remember stuff. You cut it, what's the straight shot now? Like very much that old school style, but no data to back it up. But the data is the ball flight.
It is.
Figure it out. Probably always has been. I always will be.
And you brought up a point as well about being reactive coaching. It was more about seeing what the fault was in front of you at that time, as opposed to having a long-term plan. So is that what Steve was doing with you?
Yeah, and that's just how I perceived coaching back then. And basically it was go and get a lesson every maybe 3 weeks, and the coach would say something like, "Hey, you've been hitting it? You're putting maybe 3 putts. Oh, let's go to the putting green." But that's, parents knowing, they maybe my dad thought that's what coaching was, but nowadays, it's a bit more, the coach, a good coach like Steve would say something like, "What do you want? You're 14, you want to go to tour school? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that?" And then it's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Get your TrackMan out. Here's where you're at from a club head speed point of view. Here's where you need to be. You're weak here. You do this. Your putting's bad. And then bang, bang, bang. And then here's your plan. So that's a little bit of like, not parents' fault, but no clear picture. Sometimes things happen organically, right? So I've gone through junior state team, BIS, that kind of thing. Maybe just you go to Q school and hopefully things work out. But I think if we did it again, it'd be a bit more regimented. And that's not anyone's fault. It's just, what's he supposed to do?
Yeah.
So you would sort of propose plans maybe to parents back then. And I'm sure he might have did it with my old man, but who knows? There's so many variables, right?
definitely. I'm curious what, obviously, if you went from state coaching with John into VIS, that would have been kind of the first exposure to some sports science.
Yeah.
How did
so
that
good.
go?
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, different, but kind of awesome, because I think that's really molded my coaching now. And I think maybe a handful of us would have gone into your traineeship already knowing a lot already. But yeah, going from JD to like, talking about glute max, glute med, 1RMs and ball flight laws and spin loft and stuff, it was a bit like, all right. But having said that, I didn't think I was that. I didn't think I had much golf IQ. I just had sports IQ. Like I was good at footy, cricket, everything. But I don't think I needed much biomechanic analysis. And in a group setting through the VIS, which was an awesome program, I think it can hinder a lot of people who don't need to be technically bashed. And I think I fell into that category of just, tell me where I'm at, tell me what to do, but I don't know what you mean by put a TheraBand in between your knees and do swings and restricted movements. It didn't resonate well with me. I'm not saying that's why I never made it. There's numerous reasons, but I don't think that works for everyone. And I think if you talk to a lot of elite players, maybe back then, they'll say a similar thing. A lot of people will say, look, you're in the VIS because you're very good. Let's just get you to a position where you can shoot 20 under in a Riversdale Cup, as opposed to going to the first team in a Riversdale Cup and thinking about your right scap kind of thing. But once again, people will resonate with different learning outlets. I didn't think I was in that category. So, but yeah, from what I've learnt being a young fella with so many good mentors around me, and then getting into the VIS was like, I feel like I can regurgitate a lot of this knowledge to clients, and probably that's where I saw the coaching avenue, rather than going to your traineeship going, let's learn about coaching. I felt that, man, I've picked Darren Coles, Marty Joyce's, Noel Blundell's, the Richard Coonies of the world, brains already, and I feel like I'm the apprentice already. Let's get my ticket to coach. So I think that's where I am now.
Interesting point you bring up about the sports science, and you kind of got it thrown at you when you first went into.
Yeah, I was 17. Yeah,
it's probably evolved a bit since then, I would think.
No doubt. No, it has.
But it's almost like it's brand new technology. We have all this information. We're going to give you it all, and then we'll work out what works and what doesn't work, which, as you said, didn't work for you. So it's
and
a
that's
challenging
nobody's fault. It's just like,
and it's a challenging space for the coach as well, because all of a sudden they have all this information.
You feel like you should give it. Yeah.
Yes, and I've been guilty of that in the past as well. And it's hard to know how much to give people, and you're almost better off spoon feeding it and then adding more if you need to, rather than, because it's hard to take back if you give too much.
Correct.
Straight up. So
they've heard it.
Yes, they have. And again, and if it's, as a golfer, I'm sure you're aware, if it's stuck in your head, it's hard to get out.
Yeah. And that's the challenge, isn't it? That's purest coaching, knowing what to say, how much to say, like at what level of smartness do I need to deliver this message to an engineer or to a ladies' clinic or to a Brett Coletta kind of thing. That's the challenge.
So from there out to try it on the tours?
So basically at that stage, I feel like I was never in the game mentally. It's just like an organic process, right? You go, you play 2 years in national events, and I went to Asian Q school and then played sort of like a year of the development tour events. During that time, it was like, upon reflection, you look back and you go, man, these guys are really good. If you asked a lot of them what they wanted to get out of their golf, they would say, I'm going to get on the US tour and become number one in the world. If you were to ask me, I would say, oh, this is kind of cool going to the Philippines. Like, it's like, but like, once again, all these experiences have molded the human I am today. And even though it was maybe a short stay playing, it was like, I have a wealth of knowledge and I know what the best players do. and I can once again perhaps regurgitate some of this information to up and coming youngsters, especially. But yeah, I would never have thought of myself as a tour pro. So it's funny how you just kind of do it. I just kind of went through that pathway. Whereas there'd be a lot of people now who are 35 and maybe think that they see themselves in that sort of persona, which is, everyone's different. But 1 year and I was like, get me out of here. I got friends buying houses and here I am playing for 60,000 and doing it cold. Like, what are you doing, mate? Like, do your traineeship and let's get a job. And that was just me.
So this is a question I ask everyone that goes up and plays up in Asia.
Yes.
Because I had a hell of a time when I first went up there to coach, just with the greens and the grain. How did you go from the sandbelt down here, all high quality greens, to playing golf up there?
Different. Even the way they added more loft to their putters to negate some of that, and typically a high bounce sort of like diggy arrangement. And coming from a real sort of Victoria Golf Club sort of nipper, it was like I had no idea what we're in for. But look, you kind of you get a feel for it, and the shine and the grain, even though it becomes more prevalent perhaps in the afternoon, you adapt pretty quick. But at the start, it's definitely probably more like the humidity in that, like training regimen in Asia. And to be honest, I wasn't sort of doing it professionally. It was all just like a bit of a, let's see how this goes. But I could imagine like playing on the tour would be difficult, trying to go to the gym, train at the right times and deal with, 3 or 4 typhoons a week. Like it's pretty full on relative to Australia. You don't realize how lucky we are, even with like temperature. Like even winter here is like it's pretty bearable, to be honest. Just wear a jacket. Whereas like wet season, there's so many delays.
It used to kill me up there. It was so hot and humid and just
get out of the shower and you're sweating again.
Oh, it was just killed me. My first trip from Taiwan was to the Philippines. And it was so hot and just so sticky, and it's like it's 25 and it's like you're drenched in sweat.
100% humidity. I reckon it was about 39 degrees in a place called Sunrise Country Club in Taiwan, Taipei, and obviously humid as well. And it was just like, this is brutal. And you had your umbrella up just like as you do to just get some respite. But it was just hot. That was the biggest thing, I reckon.
That's where I lived for 18 months.
Did you?
That's where I coached at Sunrise.
Did you?
So I was in that hotel. That was my
massive
house.
Pool.
Yeah, that was my house for a year and a half. Was Sunrise.
I got food poisoning from the Japanese restaurant inside the hotel, FYI, if you ever go back. But anyway.
Did you? We always ate there. We ate at the Chinese restaurant or the Japanese restaurant.
There was a tournament called the Ballantines Tournament, and I remember pulling out because I had a massive like food poisoning situation.
When was that? 2001?
Maybe like 13.
Okay, would have been just after me. I was there 2008.
Yeah, there you go.
And then I was in China after that. So.
Got it. Ah, there you go. Whereabouts in China?
Shandong province we were in.
Okay, Shandong province.
But we'll talk about
academies
as we get to it.
Yes, we will.
But okay, so didn't go so well out on tour, which is a pretty common theme, and got into the coaching.
Yeah.
So the thought process from that was just to essentially get a job, was it, or
I think just genuinely get a job, and I felt that I could provide a service to, let's say, numerous people that I played golf with, even from a Victoria/Heritage Golf Club setting, who were like, I guess, oh, you're a good golfer, do you coach? And I'm like, no, I'm not allowed to, da-da-da-da-da. But now I'm like, all right, if I get into coaching, I can genuinely hit the ground running. Because I could speak a little bit of Mandarin, and I don't know how, but I know how, through school. But I'm like, man, this would come in handy. I could say things like numbers and body parts, and with the Chinese demographic, they would sort of love that. A decent golfer throwing a few Chinese words around. I'm like, I think I can monetize this. I guess at that time, there's no one in Melbourne who can speak Mandarin, and I can't do a fluent lesson, but I can speak enough, right? And I'm like, I think there's a hole in the market for this, and there's a lot of investment for kids in the Chinese community, or Asian communities, probably generally speaking. So I'm like, I know the pathway, like I've lived the pathway. I can provide a service to, in particular, this demographic, and let's hit the ground running. And I'm like, naturally, traineeship's the only way, to be honest, to get through it. And that's where I got started. First 2 years at Yarra Valley Country Club, and then and then we were told that's going to get shut down. And then it's like, okay, so my last year was at Yarrambat, so going here, there, and everywhere. I'm like, just going to do my time. And then out of my third year, finished Yarrambat, and then Ethan Cowden, who was the head pro there, went to Woodlands. So I transitioned into head pro at Yarrambat, still wanting to coach, but like, you might be doing your 38 hours and then maybe 15 hours of lessons. But slowly but surely wanted to do less shop hours, more coaching, and then transitioned into more, full-time coaching at Bulleen driving range, probably 2 years from there. And Bulleen was going to close, and at that stage I'm like, I've got to find work elsewhere. So I was doing like 2 days at Bulleen trying to finish all these packages. I was doing 1 day at bloody Brighton Golf Club doing like clinics. I was doing 1 day at Drummond Golf Mitcham. I was just like, where are these lessons going to come from, right? So I had to transition into a full-time job once Bulleen closed, and then Isaac Siriani from TrackMan hit me up. He's like, mate, I'm leaving Metro to go to TrackMan. Would you like to start here? And I'm like, it's a Pope Catholic kind of thing, like, and finding like a really nice place where I can see myself the next 20 years, probably, to be honest. So that's been my journey. I've always been willing to work. I think everyone in the industry will tell you, like, if I were to do 6 to 12 at Brighton and then 1 to 10 p.m. at MGA, that's fine for me, because I think that's what's led me to this good job now. So, but yeah, being everywhere, mate, kind of thing.
So talk me through, just to go back a step.
Yeah.
Talk me through the step to full-time coach, because it can be really scary in Australia sometimes for coaches to feel like they can make enough income full-time coaching if you aren't a Stephen Bann or someone with a profile. Yeah. You've essentially come from a small amount of playing background, a traineeship, and then almost essentially into full-time coaching straight away. Yeah. How scary was that, and how did you make that step?
I just had clients. I just had clients ready to go, which was not just magic. I feel that I can network pretty well. And once I got into that driving range space at Bulleen, I can start tomorrow with 20 hours ready to go. And then naturally people can, you get randoms booking. It's a busy range. High Asian demographic there, which was my sort of main warm market. And I was like, so I guess fortunate that was, and I knew Damien Magadan very well. So he was my indenturing pro, let's say, well, literally. And just started. It's hard to actually tell you how it did, but it's not just you out of your traineeship. As I said earlier, prior to the traineeship, I was playing with a lot of people, and I could pull the trigger pretty easy relative to, say, a 19-year-old entering the program of 5, saying, oh, wow, it's $130 an hour. I want to do that. It's like, mate, you just need it. This happens since the age of 12, knowing people, right? Networking, playing, having a bit of having a bit of industry, people know kind of who you are ish in the industry, not to sound famous, but and then it just felt like it was a long time coming, but a bit easier for me entering the traineeship as let's say a mature age, I think. But it's always what I wanted to do post playing. I thought I could monetize it.
So how much of an impact do you think your personality, because you're obviously extremely outgoing and you talk to people and you're quite comfortable talking to people, how much of an impact do you think that had in getting your clientele built up?
I think pretty important. I actually think I'm quite introverted, but then I've got this maybe secondary persona of not caring. So I'm happy to say it. A lot of blokes, especially, just kind of aren't willing, and I'm like, I don't care. So look at the Instagram space. No, I got like maybe 2,000 followers, right? And it's like, but I started when I was doing a little bit of bullying, and I was doing like clinics at like Freeway Golf, obviously down the road, which is fine or convenient. And I was like, wait, everyone does this in every other industry. Maybe not the Dennis McDays, the Stewie Leongs, because they're here. Why would they need to? But who else is that I'm not sure you could name a great deal of young coaches. Let's say I was 28, maybe, right? 27. I don't think you can name many who are really good. I probably could, maybe like an Andrew Cooper, Michael Cooney's coming up now, but you might not be able to name any, right? So I'm like, well, I'm nobody. I think I've got some skill set. I need to get myself out there on social media. If I don't, then who are you, right? So I was willing to do that where everyone wasn't. And at the start, you're probably going to get people saying, oh, look at this dickhead on Instagram, da-da-da-da. And for me, it's like, fantastic. The more eyes, the better. And now I'm pretty busy teaching winners on the PGA of Australia Tour. So you kind of, maybe it's a good lesson for people who are kind of apprehensive. Everyone's going to try and say things. Or if you're scared to do it, well, you got to take some risk, and you're on the other side of fear, let's say. So for me, it was a no-brainer. I had no choice but to get on those platforms and have a crack. Did I know what I was doing? Probably not, but I had to get my brand out there.
It's probably good advice is to just start.
Yeah.
And if you can start putting yourself out there and just have a crack,
yeah,
you'll always it's the same as any skill.
Yeah.
Coaching, whether it's playing, whether it's doing social media.
Yeah.
Doing this podcast.
100%.
You start it, and then you.
So yeah, I think just starting, and then there's plenty of mentorship online that you can sort of, not maybe paraphrase, but you kind of know. I kind of had an idea what clientele I was after, because there's so many tips and that kind of thing these days, which is arguably not great for the industry. But I would try and document lessons as opposed to fix your slice in 20 minutes. I would say, here's what I do in a lesson. And I know the right clientele would resonate with that. Not necessarily high end, but, golfers who are like, wow, what do you mean by if the path is left, but the face is open to the path, it's going to do this, but assuming it's the middle, and people kind of, there's the golf language I wanted to hear, not the magic pill kind of thing. So that was my angle, and I still kind of try and do that today, let's say. But yeah, I think the advice I would give a lot of people who are in my shoes is no one's going to know who you are unless it's just going to be your club members. But if I can reach out to 100,000 people, well, numbers suggest I'll get slightly busier than you.
It makes sense.
Yeah, that's simple, right? Simple numbers.
That's a pretty good point you've made there about putting out what kind of content you're putting out there. Yeah. You aren't putting out the quick fix stuff. You're putting out.
I certainly hope I don't.
Yeah, you're essentially putting out. This is me as a coach.
Yeah,
this is the stuff that I do. This is how I go about it.
Yeah.
And if that appeals to you, then come and see me for some coaching.
Yeah, and the other thing is from that is I don't care if you don't like it or are offended. This is the way it is. And people, like, if you're kind of firm with that, I think that's important as well. I think I was definitely a people pleaser, as you are at the start. But now that I'm very busy, it's easier to be like, here's what you need. Here's what the evidence suggests. What are your goals? Here's the plan. Stop talking. Over to you. Whereas at the start, you're trying to, your attack angle's down, but this, and I'm trying to so every single parameter on TrackMan I'm trying to give people, it's like, now talking less is actually a lot more beneficial, just being sharp and to the point. So you do learn all the time, don't you? How much is necessary. But
yeah, very true. So how do you set your programs up to keep those clients coming back? You want to buy a subscription-based coaching?
It used to be that way, and I'm a little bit, I won't say upset, but the way that, I don't know when this is from, the 80s and onwards, the coaching model is very much package-based, and slotted base, half an hour, fix, all this nonsense. And I think that sort of generation, the boomers, if you will, have been indoctrinated with that. I scheduled a lesson with my coach. I'm playing clubbies tomorrow. I'm trying to just get so far away from that. And I understand that's what kind of pays the bills. But if I can leave, not my legacy, but if I can help pioneer this movement of, why don't you book a 10-hour lesson? That's what you need. The right people will do that. That's what you need. So yeah, at the moment, I'm very much the old school. Just, I don't do packages, but you pay for the hour, and I say 50% of my clients are just weekly clients now, which is great. But effectively trying to get out of that range model, half an hour slot. Well, hang on, that's sending the message that it is a fix. I'm not sure you go to your cricket coach for a batting lesson. You probably need seasons of work to understand the game of cricket. So, and that's why it's a little bit hard sometimes with certain demographics of, I just want a bit of a checkup. And it's like, here's what you need. And I think what I've become better at is trying to empathize with people. I'll say, oh, what do you do for work, Jonathan? I'm a physiotherapist. I go, great. What would you say if I came to you on my back sore? Can you just give me a 30-minute fix? You'd laugh in my face, wouldn't you? You would say something along the lines of, your lower back is weak and therefore tight because of this not active. It will do a bit of soft tissue. You might feel a bit better today, but here's what you need to do. Come and see me in 2 weeks, do the program. Like, not firm, but quite assertive. Why don't we do that as coaches? We kind of try to, but there's been this indoctrination of fix, and you go on Instagram and it's fix and fix and fix. I'm quite happy to tell people to their faces nowadays, like, look, and I'll give an analogy to them which they maybe resonate with. So yeah, I'm trying to get out of that 30-minute rubbish landscape if we can.
I think it just makes so much sense. You give the client what they need as opposed to what they think they want.
Correct.
Because they do. They expect you to fix their 20-year, 30-yard slice in half an hour. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. It's just crazy to think. Like, someone who's potentially a CEO of a company has this mindset. It's just the indoctrination of tips, and coaches maybe throughout the years telling them that, or maybe not telling them that. But if you go onto a MGA website, Yarra Ben, you'll just see it half an hour, and people go, "Oh, great! I'll just get a little half an hour tune up." What does that even mean? So I'll quite often tell people, I'm like, "Great, mate, you pass 3 degrees to 4 degrees left every time, man. That's awesome. That's going to suit this hole nicely." And here's how you, and now with the decade stuff, which is awesome. It's like, mate, learn to exploit your shape. Believe it or not, that's what they do on tour. They really hit a straight ball. They don't know how to hit a straight ball. They are so far from consistent, it is not funny. But here are the metrics you need to be good at to get to your desired handicap. And I think that's what's molded, let's say, the modern day coach today, or I'd like to think so.
Again, it just makes so much sense. It's really, really cool to see someone talking that way now, getting out of that coaching has been done the same way for forever, basically.
Yeah. And it's still very prevalent on social media platforms, because people still love to hear that fix. But if we can try and change that model somewhat, it's certainly more wholesome for me to coach someone who gets things, and it makes my day a lot easier. You'd much rather 30 people that pay you a lot of money a year versus 2,000 people who are just, you probably never see again. It's like, it's a terrible, I don't like that. But anyway, maybe some people do.
But it's true. You attract the clientele that you want. You want those serious golfers that are serious about improving.
Yeah. Some people at Metro we have lunch together and I'm writing a practice plan. And they go, that was the best lesson I've ever had. Didn't touch a golf ball.
Yeah.
Or having the ability to take them out on our spare hole and go, hit 5 chip shots for me, tell me the proximity of the 5 shots. And they go, you're right, I suck at chipping. I'm like, I knew that. Now you really know that. Just like, but that light bulb moment is what gets us going, right? So yeah, just knowing stats. I think that's our job as coaches, to be expert in stats. Well, let's say norms on either the pinnacle or your desired handicap range. is imperative to teach someone the game of golf. Believe it or not, that's what we do as coaches. Swing is important, but why does Tiger hit 7 fairways and have under par? Did you ever think about that? Yeah. So these are the messages I guess we're trying to get across. Well, I'm trying to get across, and hopefully that resonates with the right clientele, right?
So I'm curious how that goes at the coaching place that you are now. You have an extremely exclusive private club in golf. So how does that go with the golfers that are there? Do you get pushback?
There's certainly, call it 33% of clients who are still in that mold. I'm playing today, mate. Just need a bit of and you no worries, mate. That's fine. Yep. So here's what we're going to feel today, and they have a good time. So this is what we also have to understand as coaches. Maybe they don't care too much about the score per se, but they hit 1 or 2 shots that went 250 meters because they drew it on the 10th hole today, which suited a right to left spin axis, and they're happy. That's all they talk about in the bar after. So still understanding that, or like a ladies' clinic, hitting a chip shot in the air. We can get overly, I want everyone to be really good at golf, but it's like, mate, maybe they don't care too much about the score. Maybe they want to just hit a draw. And you got to understand that satisfaction or that level of proficiency that they're after to get satisfaction in their game. That's also our job. So, it's just knowing who needs it and who genuinely doesn't care about stats. That's okay. I can provide this service also.
Which is important too, because if you clear up front with what the client's getting and what they expect and what they're getting, then you shouldn't have any problems.
No problem.
I've got any issue with that. If that person wants a 30-minute quick fix lesson and they understand,
I can do that for you, mate.
You're probably going to be doing the same 30-minute quick fix lesson for the next 2 years, and then that's fine. If someone wants to make some serious changes and improve, then it's probably going to take 6-12 months, and we'll set a plan up.
Hence why we say, what are you after? Okay, here's what I want to get down to this. We go bang. That gives me some scope as to bang, straight up, TrackMan combine test. Here's where you're at. Doesn't want what you think. Here's what the evidence suggests. And they'll go, wow, I didn't realize I was so bad from 50 to 80 yards. And then it might be well, mate, because you've got a 10-degree gap in your wedges, or have you ever practiced this half pitching wedge? Oh no. And then it's like, man, this is gold dust. Haven't even talked about golf swing yet, but getting people to see the clear picture as where you are genuinely deficient, it's like, well, the lessons come for themselves, I would have thought. So I think being able to relay a message, or being able to go that 30-minute fix to a ladies' clinic, to talking to an engineer who's off +3 and talking about 30 degrees of flexion in their lead hand. Well, that's coaching, isn't it? And I don't care how good the coaching is. The Butch Harmons of the world, they probably get most of their money from that demographic, arguably, but probably. They become famous for teaching the elite players, obviously, but I reckon it's that almost club golfer type big clinic that they make most of their turkey off. So it's finding that balance and knowing what the client wants. But ultimately, I think most good coaches get satisfaction out of that long-term client who, you started with them here, and there's the genuine method towards it. I'm not saying it's a smooth run, but once they achieve some goals, it's like, hey, it's this, genuinely help someone achieve what they wanted, and that's what probably gets you out of bed every morning.
So tell me about China. I'm curious about what the thought process was, and how you've gone about branching essentially your brand into China.
Yeah. So this was in 2019, me and my business partner at the time, and this is all from the heritage sort of crew where I was a member at after I left Victoria, a bit close to home. And big Chinese clientele, and they were like, mate, you can speak a bit of shop here. What do you reckon we propose this idea of going to China? We went to 7 different academies over there, and it was in 2019. Literally, I was in Wuhan, of all places, before the COVID bloody kicked off.
It was your fault, was it?
Yeah, probably. It was genuinely my fault, but I reckon we got home, it would have been mid-year, and in December 2019, Wuhan was where it kicked off. Anyway, so very thorough thoughts. In China, you don't necessarily need to be a accredited member. And they're like, mate, some my business partner was from Nanjing, and he goes, mate, when I go to Nanjing University where the range is, there's like a bunch of 8 handicappers teaching for like 300 US. I'm like, oh, let's go, mate. So he has a travel company, and then that was easy for us to get visas and stuff. But just he did a lot of this connecting with. We started in Sichuan province, which is like sort of northwest, sort of Chongqing, Chengdu area. So we would go to these academies and help the coaches periodize programs, because they would just literally teach people 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hit 1,000 balls, you get better a day. And it's like, whoa, this is not necessarily the way to do things, So he was my translator, but I would give live lessons to people in my broken Mandarin, and he would sort of refine that. And then I would write these 10, 20, 52-week programs, because as you know, certainly in mainland China where I was, there's no 1 hour lesson. It's you buy half a year or you buy 1 year. And I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, this is what you need, right? Perhaps it's financially not great for everyone here in Australia, but that's what it is. Probably like every other sport. So we're like, okay, if you had an elite player, you would start with this sort of testing phase. Here's like the more tournament phase, how your gym might taper off into more maybe less strenuous strength work, and 1 RM testing at the start. And this is all the stuff I learned at the VIS. And I'm no S&C coach by any stretch of the imagination, but I got some degree of understanding of, well, that was me, right? And I had those Olympic style training from a young age, and they had nothing. They were just good, 6 handicappers giving lessons about the golf swing. I'm like, wow, I know a lot more than you, and you're charging 300 US. I'm like, man, this could kick off. So we started there. We went about 5 times in the year, with the understanding that in the Melbourne summer, which is their winter, we would get a lot of the students to come down here, and we would do like these summer camps, either at Moona Links kind of thing at the AIS, the old AIS. But then COVID hit, and then it was like, oh, whatever, like maybe we'll do it again. But ties with myself there, and Brunei as well through my father's sort of work. That's where I kind of see myself in the future. Less contact hours, but more seminars, much like a Stephen Giuliano, I guess. Seeing the world and living a bit whilst coaching, whilst being based at a metro, I guess. But China, that was trying to help people, help the coaches periodize or teach them how to coach. Like, they had no PGA traineeship. It was all just like what TikToks and stuff. It was like, oh my God, there's a huge market there. And hence why we went. And through my sort of WeChat marketing at the moment, once I did all that, I had a lot of content, right? So leak that into the Melbourne market, which is, there's a lot of Chinese here, even without me. And it was like, wow, you teach a lot of Chinese. And as you said, how do they get quite busy at Bulleen? It was like, well, hopefully I'm that guy. You're the guy that Chinese go to. And that leads to better players and whatever. So it was easy for me to start in that sense.
Yeah, so China's a challenging space, and you've certainly set yourself up well there, having spent 3 years in that area. It's a challenging space, and all the challenges you spoke about were exactly the same challenges that I've faced over there as well. So
say that again.
Good way to generate some more income, which is always a positive. So. That's really cool. So tour plays, you've got your hand in the pie when it comes to coaching some tour players. I saw one was reasonably successful ago in about a 24-hole playoff. The way he was,
I know, it was crazy, wasn't it? Crazy.
I happened to catch the end of it and saw the last few holes and saw the playoff there. But how does your coaching change when it comes to coaching those guys?
Well, for very good players, it's actually, I find it, not when I say easy, but you just ask them from my experience, what is the shot shape that you desire? What are the things that help you play well? What have you felt and thought when you've had great success? And then from there, that sort of models the swing. Don't want to get too much in it with, let's say, Brett, but he had a particular movement which was hindering his ability to hit a right to left shape. And then we identify that with some modeling on a sand balance lab, and a TrackMan. We go bang, bang, bang. Here's the cause and effect. Here's what my understanding is you need to do to create this shape that you cannot hit. Let's get to work. And that was, we've seen each other maybe like 8 hours, and then it's like the same lesson every time. Maybe a bit of random capto stuff here and there to check some putting. But really, it's the same lesson. How is it looking? Does it need to be here? Yep, that's looking really good. Thanks, that's all I need. I mean, you don't really do anything. A bit of a pat on the back sometimes. They're great players. Sometimes you just need to remind them of that. Not all the time. You need to remind them of that. So, but challenging in the sense that I can say more, but I know I'm better at knowing how much to say, what to say, having a bit of a laugh, having a chat about their schedule, and it just kind of happens. Him and Jimmy Marcazzani have had some really good results recently, and all you can say is just get in contention and have a crack, and then naturally things may just happen. Brett made the number at TPS Hunter Valley, made the cut on the number, and then from there just bang bang. So, it's fascinating to see what elements of their game they need to be better at in, say, a bit of a recap sort of phase. But really, it's what are my preferences in the swing? What shot shape do you guys like to see? Why are you not hitting that? Bang, bang, bang. And and most of the guys that have come through have subscribed to being on the same wavelength as me with what I want to see. And from there, it's just maybe the motivation's there, is the discipline there. Do you really kind of want it? And those two boys, for example, really do want it. And it's like, man, this is such a cool space to be in. So, awesome. But, once again, just being on the same wavelength. And, well, what do? You're not trying to make them into someone they're not. So, pretty cool.
It is. And that person you are talking about is Brett Coletta. He's coming on the podcast soon.
Awesome.
He's just trying to get our schedules in some sort of sync.
Yeah, it's Hong Kong at the moment. I think he just had one under today, about tied 20th, so good start there.
I think I said to him, just wait until you get home, and then we'll catch up. His house is around the corner.
Yeah,
his old house.
Got it.
Parents' house is around the corner, so we can catch up.
Yeah, unfortunately, he won a couple of weeks ago, so there might be a few more events, and you might have to postpone that, mate.
That's it. No, but that, and as you said, and it's a question I'll ask him. Like, he came out at 62, didn't he, to get into that playoff?
Yeah, 9 under. Yeah, last round.
Sitting around there for an hour or so.
Oh, it's crazy. Must have been the black socks and the shorts combo.
No, I'll definitely ask him about those. But he was a skinny little kid when I was coaching at Rossdale a long time ago. So it's cool to see him doing so well out there. So
cool to see the boys that we know do well. It's like a Micheluzzi type figure. It's like, Dave. It's just Dave. But for the other boys and girls that we know, that's like, man, look, you can do it. Like, that's just Dave, I guess. Look, and now it's the rocket ship's taken off. So you're only a week away, huh?
Yeah. So I've got 5 questions I throw to everybody that comes on the podcast. So I'm going to throw those at you. What advice would you have for coaches starting out?
Mentorship. And I think it's something that the PGA traineeship is awesome, but mentorship ultimately drives success in any human or any human space. So that personal development, I'm big on that. And there's so much free information on Instagram. Just follow some really good coaches. Learn their mannerisms. Learn how professional they are, for example, the language they use. But it's not necessarily golf swing that gets you to be a very good communicator / mentor, and maybe influencer, and maybe role model to younger kids. So I think it's a lot more than golf to get to a high level, which I still aspire to get to.
It's a common theme that comes up to that question. It is surrounding yourself with good people.
Yeah.
If you've got those people you can bounce ideas off and talk to about where you're going, it makes a huge difference.
Massive. It's something you got to. And I don't know how that may happen to me, but I've always been around really good coaches, and it felt like I was just getting a leg up on a lot of maybe other trainees who are getting into their traineeship, not knowing anything about coaching. Whereas myself, I've been very lucky to have all these knowledge nuggets given, or you could call it luck, or maybe putting yourself into good positions, I guess, and then being able to go start to coach. And the exciting thing is I've got so much more to learn, and it's like, man, this is kind of a cool space to be in.
Okay. So what about golfers out there? What advice for them?
Be real and don't kid yourself. Be really aware of statistics you need to be good at to be better relative to your perceived goals, whether it's a 14-year-old who thinks they're really good off 5 and the dad going, does my son have what it takes? And you go, okay, well, here's probably where you need to be by the age of this, or, the average 14-year-old needs to be like this. But were you aware that the median putting average on tour was 28.92? And that's literally what it is. Or were you aware that the average driver distance on tour was 297 yards? Oh, that's pretty long. It's like, yeah, that's where you need to be at to compete. Or, average 4 birdies around at a hard course, not the front tees at your home bat. So knowing stats helps you go just as where you're at. And this is another thing with golf which does me. In footy, you probably have standardized testing like beep tests and vertical leaps and this kind of thing. That should be just common knowledge for a 16-year-old, I would have thought. So with TrackMan and more biomechanical analysis now, it's like, bang, just here's where you're at, here's where you need to be at, and or at whatever range you need to be at. Know your numbers and get to work. Don't be afraid to change your training, because training is ultimately a byproduct of, the score is a byproduct of your training, isn't it? So do things different if you need to.
A great advice there. It's really cool to understand where you need to be, and as opposed to just having these rose-colored glasses on what you think golfer. I think some people just don't quite get how good those tour players actually are.
Oh, it's frightening.
Yeah.
Having said that, you don't need to be that level to make a really good living in golf. You can still be a really good pro-am player and work 38 hours. That's a good life to a lot of people. So once again, being upfront with what you're after, and then a coach/mentor should be able to, here's what you need relative to your skill set or your goals. Let's get to work.
So where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
So in all honesty, let's say 5 years' time will be 37, 38. I want to be renowned as a really good coach in Australia, teaching at the highest level, being Brando, that's the guy you go to in Melbourne kind of thing. I know what I need to do to get there, which is really exciting. But as I said earlier, living a bit more. I think at the moment, sort of 48 hours this week, 48 hours next week already. It's tough kind of thing, because as you know, it's not just the contact hours. It's even as we're speaking, I'm like, can I play tomorrow? I've got to cancel tomorrow. Can I? So it's how do I create a better balance? I think it's a good position to be in, to be busy, but now I can kind of, maybe I do less hours, but create an online platform, which I'm going to start soon with a colleague of mine, which is really exciting in the golf space. But yeah, just having some more freedom to do what I want, creating a residual income through that platform, a bit more travel, and I think collaborating with a lot of coaches, not necessarily in Melbourne, but around the world will be pretty cool. I've already started networking in that space, which is cool. So yeah, just using golf as an outlet to live a little bit more.
That's really cool. So platform starting up, that's the little sneaky little plug there. So
little sneaky little plug. I can't tell you yet because they haven't done a great deal, but we've done a lot of planning, myself and Andrew Cooper, actually. So a lot less tippy, but a big database for golf mentorship / education. So an introduction to X, Y, and Z versus tips.
When you get that up and going, we'll get you back on the show.
Beautiful, yeah. When we get it up and going, but it's something that's like, okay, here's what I want to do, but we'll get there.
No, that's cool. Okay, so anything you would change in your journey to get to where you are now?
Yeah, I think I would have studied maybe fluent Mandarin. If I was fluent Mandarin, I could be a walking millionaire tomorrow if I actually did it properly. But
It's hard to learn, though. I tried.
It's hard. It's so many the same word spelt can be new, especially the swear words can mean so many similar normal words. Anyway, I think I will do that. I'm still kind of learning it, let's say, but I would have done that, learned it properly. But just being more savvy in the IT sense, like now.
For today's effort.
Oh, seriously. But kind of knowing that for the last 10 years, but no one's really taken a stranglehold of it. I don't think so in Australia. People dabble in social media, but I think there's still a huge opportunity to do something from an online platform. Like a Skillus, I guess, is really good, but it's just, I think maybe a bit backwards here in Australia because that's very common overseas. Like clients are so aware of like PayPal and lessons versus here, this is kind of just very new. As I said, getting out of that sort of pay as your hourly lesson space into more, I'm your golf coach, not some guy who you come to see for an hour sort of thing. But yeah, what would I change? I would get more savvy in the IT. I would, just from a general sense, be more financially literate in terms of mortgages and stuff from a younger age. It's probably nothing to do with golf, but from a golf sense, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. Just network, and I think I've done a lot of that well already, to be honest. But yeah, IT, learn tech, get better with tech, and automate a lot of things.
Like it.
Instead of having to rely on people for it.
Yeah, no, that's all good. I think that's really cool. Okay, so you've spoken a heap about talking to other coaches about to improve your skills and improve your understanding of stuff. Any other sources of information? Any other places you go? Any podcasts you can tell me about, or anything?
Yeah, big on the podcast. This is a weird one, and I study speakers, like not necessarily people who do good things, but like good influences. Let's say I study the mannerisms, like the literature, like not not NLP kind of stuff, linguistic programming, but I'm big on watching people of influence and how they conduct themselves, and I study that, and I really try and portray that in a coaching sense. It's kind of a weird one. You might not hear that anyone else say it, but I get a lot out of learning literature and how people convey messages, whether it be salespeople, whether it be CEOs, whether it be dictators. I know it sounds kind of weird, but it's like, man, this is a lot of power in this message, whatever they're saying, not necessarily good things, but yeah, I find that really helps me deliver messages to people, whether it be direct, whether it be a little less autocratic. But I think that kind of helps me learn a bit more about my craft. As I said earlier, I don't think it's a golf swing and golf game is important, but being a communicator is arguably way more important.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. It is, and again, you talk about those bad people that you get, graders, but they're obviously charismatic.
Message.
They had people follow them, so they're doing something right.
And they're probably the best. They're probably the best.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's like this weird ideology, but it's like, tell you what, it's pretty convincing. So as weird as that is, kind of weird.
That makes sense. I've got no issue with that. So plugs, mate. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm teaching at one place now, Metropolitan Golf Club, Brandon Rave Golf on Instagram, one word, and BrandonRaveGolf.com. Just Google it, and you can hit us up through there.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate your time
today
coming in and chatting to me. Apologies for the tech issues.
No, it's probably my fault. In fact, it is my fault, so I apologise.
I'll get you on again at some stage, but we'll do it in person. So
no worries. Sounds good.
Thanks, mate. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Brady. Take it easy, mate. See you, buddy. Bye.